I mean, it seems like they're so detached from reality that it's hard to throw out a fishing rod and reel them back in because, first of all, Russia has demonstrated, as I said earlier on when I was interviewing Larry Johnson, former CIA analyst earlier, Russia has demonstrated through the destruction of a NATO armed and trained military. Three times we're in the fourth going with the destruction of the Ukrainian army. They are destroying all of the so-called advanced weapons that are being supplied by NATO to Ukraine, and then Russia has demonstrated that it is leaps and bounds ahead of them in missile technology and missile defense technology, and yet they are still pushing this thing towards war. Could it be that in the minds of the leaders of the West, they understand that they now, the European Union is spiraling out of control with debt. The United States has an unpayable debt that even if all of the nations on earth got together, they could not pay down the debt. Could this be a last gasp act of desperation to try to cower the nations to maintain dollar hegemony, or else they're saying, listen, if I can't rule, I'm prepared to kill everybody?
Yeah, I think you're thinking on the right level, man. I mean, honestly, I think the same. Although you know me, like I tend to see things from a nested layer of motives. So there's like mechanisms within mechanisms. Now, one of the big mechanisms is exactly what you said. I believe that a big chunk of the U.S. security establishment and deep state do think they are motivated by exactly what you said. And in a time when there is a financial crisis brought on by our own sin, our own desire to make money out of gambling and not produce and merit what value we expected the US dollar to carry. Yeah, I mean that went on for decades. And so the expected consequence of deregulating the system, allowing private financier corporate interests to have more power than nation states, which was the foreseeable consequence of the mass deregulation of the 70s that went on to the 80s, that got even worse in the 90s, that it transformed our economy into a time bomb. Now, I think that those who managed that transformation of the economy from a viable industrial economy of the 50s and 60s into a total time bomb of speculative consumer society insanity, I think that they knew exactly what they were doing. And I think that they knew that they were creating a time bomb in the same way that I think that those who imposed the system of the Versailles Treaty debt repayments onto Germany in the 1920s knew exactly that was going to blow out the economy into a hyperinflationary blowout. I think that those who brought about the deregulation of 1924, 1925, 1926 in the United States, that created the easy money age of just it was the party era for the elites, where they were able to make easy money without earning it. Those who orchestrated that policy transformation over the dead body of Warren Harding, the president who sabotaged the League of Nations One World Government in 1923. That President Warren Harding, who died by very mysterious circumstances. When he died, there was a complete transformation of the U.S. policy overseen by Mellon, the finance minister, Coolidge, who was a sort of proto-George Bush puppet idiot, who brought in all of these J.P. Morgan hacks to shape U.S. internal economic policy that resulted in creating bubbles where there was once a viable economy that could then be detonated by a pinprick. And that was the Great Depression, the 1929 blowout. So I think that we've got something in play right now, which is larger in scope and scale, because now we're dealing with, 1.4, 1.5 quadrillion dollar speculative derivatives time bomb that's been built up, especially since 87, when the economy really blew out. When I was just a little kid, that's when our economy blew out. And Alan Greenspan came about this as a solution. Instead of dealing with the economic crisis as he should have, he instead normalized derivatives and other creative financial instruments that you formerly would have gone to jail, like Michael Milken did, for playing with, like junk bonds, or gambling with derivative differentials in the prices of whatever securitized debt commodity was being gambled upon and insured on the spot or futures markets. So he just went and did something that made an already bad situation infinitely bad. And now it's been like almost 40 years of this deterioration. And yeah, I think that they might want to kick over the chessboard and then blame Russia or blame Iran or blame China or whoever as being the cause of all of our economic woes and desperation and the fact that we can't feed our family and we're afraid. And so they like that. And they might be, they might like to trigger some sort of another. It's 9/11 today, right? That was a false flag. We now know in hindsight, there's been bountiful evidence that we were lied to. That dude in the cave actually had nothing to do with orchestrating 9/11 at all. And yet it justified us giving our acquiescence to eating freedom fries because Chirac didn't want to like back up our bombing of this country that had nothing to do with 9/11. And we supported, we even, like, Democrat and Republican alike, right? People marched in lockstep by and large and supported this infinite war of this clash of civilizations that Zbigniew had wired into our system back in the 70s. And then they really amplified it with Clean Break and Richard Helms and the neocon resurgence in 96, 97 over Yitzhak Rabin's dead body. That's when they brought in Bibi Netanyahu and started triggering that new Anglo-Zionist, Christian Zionist freak show that did so much damage to the world, but then brought in this, neocon Straussian takeover of government by forever crisis. So whenever you were in forever, as long as you were in crisis, you could always utilize executive orders to bypass the democratic aspect of government. And we've been in crisis now for 23 years since 9/11, and we've done so much damage. The consequences are still there, and now we're like the system is melting down. It's unstoppable. It hasn't fully hit the chain reaction blow yet. There's a number of spark plugs, triggers that could be struck to blow out the system. It seems as though they haven't felt comfortable blowing it out yet, though I feel like had Russia and China or Iran and the BRICS Plus, had they not done what they did over the past decade, I think that they would have already blown out the system, believing that every nation was locked in the building that was going down and blown out together. But now that a whole bunch of countries have gotten out of the building, they've been trying to sabotage from other asymmetrical means possible to weaken those countries that are not really getting weak as those game planners want. And so they're now in a situation where they're saying, well, okay, let's pull out, whether it's a cyber polygon, cyber attack that we could blame on the Russians or the Chinese or some combination, or maybe doing something with the Iranians and saying that they tried to kill Biden and Trump. Let's just make stuff up that would then convince a bunch of dumbed down people that they're the cause of our economy blowing down. And then we can issue under crisis a new type of dollar, a new type of thing tied to exactly what they did in Weimar in 1923, right? When people who had billions and billions of dollars of Reichsmarks that were worth nothing could bring in their wheelbarrows of money to Hjalmar Schacht, who had been trained by Montague Norman at the Bank of England, that was Hitler's finance minister, and trade your wheelbarrow of billions for one new Rentenmark. But that new Rentenmark would be now associated with a new set of rules that would be much more libertarian in scope, much more based upon shutting down government jobs, government services, a whole new set of things and that's what I think that they want to do with this whole new, idea of a central bank digital currencies that they could only bring online if they blow out what currently exists and have it tied to the types of behaviors that people like Mark Carney, who's currently being positioned to become the new Prime Minister of Canada, or Chrystia Freeland, who works closely with Mark Carney, or any of these freaks and technocrats managing a big chunk of the Western establishment. They want a new set of rules of economic behavior to recondition both individuals but also corporations to behave in ways that will induce us to depopulate and shut down our living standards ourselves by monetarily incentivizing activity like eating bugs instead of eating meat, or driving your bike and getting rid of your car, or whatever, or getting whatever injection of something that will deprive you of your universal basic income if you don't do the thing that you signed up for to get your universal basic income, because there's no other economy, whatever. So they've got this whole dystopian logic. Russia and China and India are bringing online with other countries, Iran and many others, a different type of idea of economic value, which is incompatible with this Dark Age doctrine, which I think gives me a lot of hope, but I think they want to destroy it. So all that to say, yes, I share your concern. I believe that they might try to do total war to try to rearrange their banking system under the fog of war. That's a concern for sure.